Hi folks, and welcome to How to Become a Writer. This is part 6 where we talk about endurance and discipline, how to get to the end of your project. My name is Douglas Kruger. I'm the author of 12 commercially published non-fiction books, several of which are bestsellers in my country, and I'm the author of 2 novels. I decided to switch to fiction. Novel number 2 comes out in the next 3 weeks, for which I am incredibly excited. So, how do you get through that much writing? Well, there are several tips, techniques, and sort of blends of ideas that I will share with you here. The first one is, let's just acknowledge how incredibly difficult this is. You are embarking on a project with zero externally imposed urgency. You have to impose the urgency yourself. You have to walk out into the mist and create this project in full faith that it's going somewhere. And it might go somewhere. It might actually change the course of your life. This could become who you are in future. So it's worth taking seriously. It can be done, it has been done, and I suspect that discipline is the biggest part of this. Now, I do subscribe to the mindset that says, chances are it's going to be your third book, perhaps your third novel, that is the first to get published. So I believe in the idea that you shouldn't view a novel as a gigantic, once-in-a-lifetime mountain to climb. You see it as a big project, and that is all. And you work your way through the big project in 3 months, 4 months, perhaps give yourself 6 months or even a little more. But keep the timing quite tight and concise and make sure that you get through that project and then begin the next one. That has always been my mindset. I'll share with you my blend of techniques for how I go about this. Now, the first one is to understand how myelin works in the brain. The basis of human talent is essentially how you grow myelin within your brain. And the simplest way to think of this is myelin increases the sheathing around the nerves, the neurons in your mind. The more myelin you have, the faster messages can travel. If you've ever had the experience of learning to ride a bike, learning to speak in public, learning to drive a car, you'll be familiar with this concept that it feels like there's too much to think about at the same time. However, once you've driven a car for a couple of years, you don't even think about it anymore. You can drive to work while listening to the radio and perhaps having a conversation with someone. You get to work and you don't even realize you've done it. So, the first time you write a book, it is incredibly difficult. It feels like climbing a mountain. The second time you do it, it's not quite as bad. By the time you get to novel or book number 5 or 6, it simply becomes a thing that you know how to do. The rhythms, the patterns of behavior come much more naturally. So it's hard until it isn't. But there's no way to get to that ease without going through the difficulty. You have to build up that talent over time. Do the hard work and you will grow the substance called myelin in your brain. It's like broadband for messages. Everything moves faster, and things that other people will find technically challenging, you'll look at and go, oh, it's just that, and you'll do it with ease. But you have to put in the hours, you have to put in the work. Now, second thing is, I'm quite hard on myself. I do not subscribe to the idea that the muses must be there and the stars must be in position and today's a sacrosanct writing day. I believe in doing the work. So I apply this to going to gym, I apply this to writing books. It's not about whether or not I feel like it. Get up, go there, and feel like it when you're there. And I have days, gym is a great example for that one. Days where you wake up and you go, I could not care less about going and working hard at a gym. What I do though is I don't think about it. I don't overthink it. Put my stuff in my bag, I walk out of the door, I arrive at the gym and I start. And by the time I'm 10 minutes in, I discover that I'm enjoying it. Same thing works with anything that requires huge amounts of input. Get started. Don't overthink it. Don't overplan it. For heaven's sake, don't build up a crazy ritual where you have to tap the sky 3 times and turn a mug around. Don't do that to yourself. Sit down and begin. As you begin to tinker, it starts to flow. If you've ever been in a flow state, there's something wonderful about that. You get lost in the whole process and hours can go by. You might have planned to write, say, 500 words, 1,000 words, 2,000 words. You look down and you've written 7,000 words. That flow state never happens unless you get into the work and start to get going. Now, here are a few more practical things that you can do in order to get to that flow state. Make the interesting stuff happen quickly. Now, here's what I mean by that. To learn this skill, I recommend reading a lot of the writers from the previous century. People like Paul Gallico, James Michener, John Steinbeck, people who are renowned in the past century. You will notice how incredibly concise their writing is. And what they do there is they get to the things that matter very swiftly. And I think there's something to be said for writing quickly. Now, when I say that, I don't mean pounding the keys hard and getting your heart rate up. I mean the ability to get to the interesting things without a lot of waffling preamble. The more concise your writing is, the more interesting it is for you. You do not have to wade out into pages of text before you get to the good stuff. Go straight to the good stuff. The more concisely you can create a universe in a paragraph, the quicker you can move into that which is fascinating both for you and for your reader. A similar technique. Quite often, you don't have to bother to explain. There may be a great deal of backstory, a great deal of intrinsic character understanding that has gone into something that's happening. Who cares? Just drop that little hint and keep the story moving. It will become revealed as you go along. That's a great technique for building suspense, and it's a wonderful gift to you. You don't have to stop and go, footnote. Okay, he was born in Minneapolis in 1922, and the reason he's doing this is, who cares what the reason is? We'll find out later. So, move swiftly through things without necessarily explaining what's going on. Build the mystery, it will become apparent later. It's a gift to you, it's a gift to your reader. Next one. Don't dissipate your own energy by talking about the project. It is entirely possible to have this wonderful idea for a story that it's delicious in your brain and you have to tell someone. And then you go and tell the whole countryside, and that impetus is gone as a result. Take the impetus and put it on the page. I find that what happens for me is, if I'm not at my computer, I will record ideas on my phone. Best case scenario, I put it directly into the document that will become a novel one day. And I find what happens is, as I put it down, I think of a thing that someone should say, and I think of where the scene should take place, and by the time I've looked back up, instead of just noting an idea with, say, 50 words or 100 words, I've written 500 words. And all of that becomes part of the manuscript. So put that energy directly into the document. Don't dissipate it by discussing it with a group of people. You are not a neurotic member of a WhatsApp group where you have to go, guys, what do you think? How does everyone feel? Don't do that. It dissipates energy and it becomes idea by committee. Instead, take your idea, put it directly into your document, start to flesh it out, start to build, start to think, what happens before that? What kind of character goes through this? What kind of character would hate to go through this so that I've got a bit of dramatic tension? And build and build. You'll find then what will happen is additional content will haunt your dreams. You'll be in the shower and you'll have to get out and write down a bit of dialogue. You will be walking outside and you'll have to get back home and quickly just jot down that thing that has to go into it. And that's how it begins to build. Finally, you do need to do a great deal of reading to have the internal resources to get into the zone quickly and to be able to write concisely with discipline. But obviously, not all of it has to be on paper. My own preference is for interesting non-fiction during the day via Audible on my headphones, and for reading fiction at night. That partly also relates to good sleeping patterns. It's apparently better to read fiction before you go to sleep, seems to help the brain, gets it into the right mode, and so forth. But I try to be as varied as I possibly can. Off the top of my head, today's Audible book was a Spanish language learning tape. Hola. And when I get into bed later on, I've just completed a Jeffrey Deaver novel, and I will now be picking up a gigantic historical fiction novel by James Michener called Texas. Michener is a fantastic author. He will take a geographical locale, start at the dawn of time, and work his way up to the present day. The novels are all 1,000 pages and more, but the writing is outstanding. And it teaches you that incredible, concise approach to building a world, building a scene quickly and efficiently, and getting to the good stuff. So I strongly recommend reading writers from the previous century to learn that skill. Now, there's another, who knows what I'm going to be reading next? The next one might be The History of Eels or Quantum Physics or How to Draw Phineas and Ferb. I like to keep it varied. And that is also part of a technique that I heard expressed by Terry Pratchett, who said, you already know the genre in which you want to write. You've probably read a great deal of whatever it is you want to write. Now get out of that universe. Go get ideas from other places and import them into your world. So, if you write horror, you've probably read enough horror. Go read something else. Bring in ideas from other universes. If you are interested in writing, say, thrillers, learn about architecture, learn about history, ancient civilizations. Pour things into your mind so that you have ideas from different places. Without going into huge depth on this one, there is a massive amount of research on the idea that the best creative and innovative thinking is the ability to see concepts in different worlds and import them into your scenario. So if you're not looking out at other worlds, if you're not reading about ancient Babylon and quantum physics and whatever interesting thing catches your eye, you're actually denying yourself the depth of richness that you could bring to your writing. You will probably find that people who do this as a matter of course do not suffer from writer's block. It simply isn't the case because there is a richness of varied worlds spinning around in their imagination all the time. And I find I'm perhaps blessed to be in this situation right now. We're about to launch novel number 2, and I have written novel number 5. My problem is the slow publication schedule. I would like to be doing this every 6 months, but it's taking a year and a half to get each novel out there. And that's also just as a result of learning the rhythms and patterns of doing this all the time. So I've now been writing books now for well over a decade, but I've been writing novels for several years as well. And my mind is constantly a swirl with the concepts and the rhythms and the patterns of what I want to do next. And I jot down the ideas for future upcoming novels, and the problem that I have is not coming up with ideas, it's getting them out quickly enough. What a wonderful problem to have. I wish you that problem as well. Here's how you generate that problem in your life. Do the work. Sit down and do the disciplined writing. Finish novel number 1 as though it's not a great mountain. It's a big project that you will work through in order to write number 2 and number 3. Make sure that whether or not you feel like it, you sit down and do the words. It's not a bad idea to have a daily word count. Say, for example, you want to put out 500 words a day, 1,000, 2,000 words a day. If you're new to this, try 500. If you're a little more experienced, over 1,000 is good, possibly 2,000. If you're doing this full time, you can do 2,000 plus. James Michener used to churn out 7,000 words a day, which he described as an almost indecent display of industry, and I rather love that. The more you do it, the more you build the myelin sheathing in your brain. The more you do that, the easier it gets. So the first time you do this, it all feels clunky, it all feels difficult. The 5th time you do it, you see where the parts go and you simply rearrange them accordingly. It gets easier, but it only gets easier if you do the work. The best advice for all writers is stick that bum into the chair and keep writing. I hope that helps with some of the perspectives on getting work done. Remember that the productivity is the thing. They can't hear the music in your head. You have to put it on the page, so go write.